Once again, we don't know who the shooters are. We don't know what their motives are. But what is clear and what we heard in those images is that whoever carried out this attack had access to high-powered weapons, and they were able to really put this together, this deadly attack, ambush it's been called, on law enforcement very quickly.
Yeah, I mean, look, there are two major issues here. There's the violence against police officers in this case, and also, yes, guns and violence and America and the intersection of all of those. Look, we can't say it enough. The facts speak for themselves. Americans own more guns, even relative adjusted to the population, than any other industrialized, any other rich, any other country on earth, really. I think Yemen is number 2 in gun ownership. You have a higher per capita rate of firearm killings in America than in any other industrialized nation. And it's interesting, we always say about a 1 gun per person in circulation in the U.S. Remember, the population in the U.S. is now well over 300 million, about 320 million. So we're talking maybe 320 million guns. Does that mean every American has a gun? Obviously not. In fact, the actual percentage of Americans who have guns is relatively lower than it's been in the past. It's about 32%, but still an enormous prevalence of guns. And we see that they are being used, unfortunately, and often not just any guns, military-style weapons. We'll remember in the week after the Orlando tragedy, the terror shooting there, the mass shooting, we had a half a dozen gun control measures that did not advance in the U.S. Senate. They failed to advance in the U.S. Senate. We've seen similar efforts to control guns stymied in the past in the wake of mass shootings, including the elementary school shooting in Newtown, Connecticut a few years back. So this is the broader story behind the story of what we're seeing today, guns and violence in America. But like I said, there's also the police angle here. While we have absolutely no evidence so far of any real connection or linkage between the Black Lives Matter rally and this targeting and ambush-style targeting of Dallas cops. What we do know, and what a lot of cops in the U.S. will be saying and have been saying, is that there's been a lot of anti-police rhetoric in America, a lot of hatred against cops. Perhaps a lot of it stirred, yes, by these types of incidents, these fatal shootings of Black Americans by cops, but just in general hatred of cops. And a lot of cops feel that they're not getting enough support. So you can expect to hear in the next few days a lot of probably law enforcement, a lot of police themselves coming out and talking about the need for more high-level support for what they do, the dangerous jobs that they do. Barack Obama has been treading a very delicate line, obviously, as well, trying to lend support to the cops. While pointing out racial disparities in the criminal justice system, he doesn't want to, by any means, be saying, well, Black lives matter, blue lives don't, meaning the cops in blue.
Indeed, and actually, we heard from the president. I mean, he had to speak once again, then two times in the span of less than 24 hours concerning these 2 different incidents. We're talking about, of course, the shooting of 2 Black men just this week in Louisiana and Minnesota. That has created such outrage. And then he has to switch gears and, of course, protect law enforcement officials. He has to stand up for them, which is expected and necessary. It's a hard thing to do at this time because it's quite uncomfortable and necessary.
It's very, very difficult for Barack Obama because he really has made sort of tackling the racial profiling, trying to go after gun violence. Obviously, he's been thwarted and frustrated in those efforts, a real pillar of his presidency. And at the end of the presidency, after each mass shooting, when we see him get up to the White House podium, we clearly see the growing frustration, almost a sense of resignation at this point. He looked downright tired today. Perhaps that was a long flight to Poland, but there's a real sense of weariness in a president who perhaps feels that he's tried to do all he could, and there's not the popular will yet. He has appealed to the popular will to try to change things. At the same time, his critics use this against him. They say he's talked so much about the victims of police violence. He's talked so much about the Black victims. This president hasn't lent enough support to the police themselves. A lot of police will perhaps feel like they have been sort of sidelined or not given the credit they deserve by the President of the United States. Now, I personally would have to say, editorializing here, perhaps that's a low blow against Obama because he has been, in most of his statements, very careful to pay tribute to the law enforcers. And he was very clear today in paying tribute to the nobility of what he said, the absolute vast, overwhelming majority of policemen who do extremely dangerous, very difficult jobs at great risk to their lives, as we saw in this latest incident. And needless to say, in the videos we've been seeing, that video before, what are the police doing? They are running towards the shooters. They're running towards the fire, not away from it. That is not the human survival instinct. That is something that you have to be pretty brave to do, and you have to be pretty dedicated to your job to do. And that, I think, is the message that Barack Obama has been trying to get across in tandem with, yes, the other message of recent days in different types of incidents where he's talking about those racial disparities in the way criminal justice is applied in America, and a definite need for all Americans, not just blacks, not just Hispanics, all of them to come together and address it. Separate issues, and he really has been trying to make an effort to draw a distinct line between them.
Indeed.